Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to Side Hustle Ideas. I am Bill, the company's expert. Oh, man, I apologize for the late start today. I always seem to be sort of running things too quick to the limit, too tight to the limit, so that, if you have one little thing, you take a phone call, or you talk to somebody, it just throws everything off. So I'm going to have to get more of a buffer zone, shall we say, between things, so that my schedule isn't thrown off for these live streams quite so often. Welcome to everybody. This is the live stream where we do pretty much weekly, where we talk about entrepreneurship and side hustles, as the name implies. And this is where basically it's a live interactive show where you can get in the chat and ask me questions and tell me what you're dealing with and wondering about, and I will do my best to help you out. Yes, the title of this episode is The Magic of Side Hustles. And lately it seemed like we were talking about a lot of very technical topics, getting into, a lot of technical details. And I wanted to just pull it back and talk a little bit about, the generalities of what side hustles are, what they can do, and why you should consider doing one. If you have any creative drive or any desire to make another income stream, this is something that is an incredible thing. And I'm a big believer in it. I believe that, learning the skills that you do doing this type of activity can really open a lot of doors for you in life and in your career and give you a lot of options. So I'm a big fan of this stuff. So I wanted to talk about that today. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes here, just a couple of seconds, and just make sure that my cameras and everything are looking fine, because I didn't have a chance to do basically any technical preparation whatsoever today with my live stream. So this has been happening increasingly to me lately. So hopefully it hasn't been too much of an issue for you guys. It would be nice to be able to start on time, for example. So I'm going to try and make more of an effort to make that happen going forward. Yes. Okay, so if you're seeing my beautiful face, the best hair on YouTube, by the way, as always, if you're seeing me, you should see a chat box somewhere nearby. Get in the chat box. Let me know what you're dealing with, what you're struggling with, what you're wondering about, and we can definitely get into it. That's the best way to do this kind of thing. But let me talk a bit about side hustles in general and see if you guys just want to jump in. There are 14 people. Thank you for joining me today. Okay, so if you are working at a day job, okay, you have a standard job essentially, and they provide you compensation in exchange. And this is what a lot of people do. Now, I've always felt that in many ways we are conditioned from when we're children to believe that this is pretty much the only thing that you can do. And that is certainly not the case. And as we go into the future, it is becoming increasingly not the case. The magic of the internet and how it connects people and enables all kinds of things to happen and business to be done. It's an incredible thing. And as you can imagine, this has really triggered a boom in people being able to do businesses on the side. And so the idea was that while you work at a day job, okay, and you put in your 40 hours a week or whatever you do, on the side, you have something that you do that's entirely your creative idea, but it's a business. So, the obvious thing is that if you have a hobby or you have a passion for something, like let's say you enjoy baking brownies or something, that's your thing, or you're passionate about cooking or something like that. And you might do it for fun, right? You bake brownies and give it to all your friends and they all tell you how wonderful they are. And you see all your friends getting fatter and fatter in front of you as the years go by. It's something that you do, that you enjoy doing, that other people like, that other people see the value in. And so the idea is that if you wanted to, that would be something that you could turn into its own little business. And it could be something that you do on the side, part-time, where it doesn't affect your day job. You still go to work for your employer 40 hours a week, but maybe on the weekends, instead of like baking brownies for your friends, which you would do anyway, you do that you do that as before, except that it's part of a separate business operation. And because you do it on the side with your day job, it's called a side hustle. That's the idea, right? So side hustles are great in the sense that they can take what you enjoy doing and you can turn it into a revenue stream. So you can make money with it. So you get money from your day job and then you get money from your soul. And when you think about this situation, there's actually many, many advantages to doing this because a lot of people experience a syndrome where you would like to do your hobby or your interest, but sometimes it feels like there's not a lot of incentive to do it. You might have to go to some trouble to do it. For example, let's say you enjoyed skiing, okay, or something like that. It's like a sport, it's a pastime, but you know, you got to have the equipment and you can't ski in your own house. You have to go to where there's a ski slope of some kind, or if you do cross-country skiing, you got to go to a place where you can do that. It might involve driving very far or something. It might involve rounding up a few friends, and sometimes this can be, you know, it's a bit of work involved and coordination involved. So you got to go to all this trouble just to do your hobby, right? So wouldn't it be great if there was an extra incentive for you to do the thing that you're interested in anyway, you know, to muscle through all the work you have to do or the lengths that you have to go to do the thing that you really want to do, right? You want to do the skiing. You're just not that crazy about the, you know, renting a time thing, coordinating with friends thing, driving an hour there and an hour back, you know, whatever, right? But if you were making money at it, that would be an incentive to do it, right? So when you start thinking about it, you think of things like this. There's actually a lot of other fringe benefits and direct and indirect benefits to turning your hobby into a business, right? So this is something that a lot of people do. It also gives you an extra incentive to do it. It makes you more passionate to do it. As people get older and as our life situation changes, sometimes it's harder and harder to weave our hobbies or our interests into our life. You know, we have family commitments, we have career commitments, we have other commitments, and it's just, you know, it gets harder and harder sometimes to like make time for these kind of things. And so, you know, this is another incentive to be able to do it. There's all kinds of things. Now, if you were to do it, if you were to do a side hustle of some kind, okay, so you have your day job and then you set up something just on the side, very informal, right? You know, you do something that brings in, say, I don't know, maybe even like a equivalent of like a couple $100s a month, right? By doing what you do anyway, it's just that now you're offering it for sale, right? So whether you sell products, like in the case of someone baking brownies, right? They bake brownies and then sell them to people. Or if, you know, you have a hobby like skiing or something, and then you turn that into a side hustle where you give skiing lessons, something like that, right? It's tied to your hobby. It gets you out to the ski slope, and it gets you doing it, right? And it keeps you thinking about skiing and, you know, learning about skiing and keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on in the skiing world, right? You know, but you're charging money for it, right? So you're turning your hobby into a business. Now, just so everybody knows, because I know that not everybody is like, you know, totally skilled in business terminology, at least flavor of the month business terms. You know, business is basically the scientific study of how to make money. That's what it is. So, you know, you might wonder, like, how does it work? If I'm doing a hobby like skiing or baking brownies, how does that flip over into business, right? Well, the idea is that if you're just doing it for its own sake, it's not business, right? So if you're just skiing or baking brownies, there's no business component to it. But the second you try and offer it for sale, say you try and sell your brownies or you try and sell skiing lessons, give skiing lessons and selling it for money, then it becomes a business, right? That's the idea. So that's where learning a little bit about business helps. And the good news is that business is really not that hard. pretty simple when it comes down to it. Now, the other obvious benefit of doing this, if you're the type of person that's interested in doing this kind of thing, having a side hustle, is that there are a lot of other fringe benefits. And one of them is that you have a little bit more security because you have your income coming from more than one source. If you just have a day job, obviously, and your income is coming from one employer, well, there's a single point of failure there. If your company is laying off or something happens, right, to jeopardize that, then it can be really bad because you lose your entire income. If, however, your income is coming from more than one source, say you have a day job and a side hustle, and maybe you could get it to the point where your side hustle is making you 50% of what your day job is making for you. So I don't know, your day job brings in, $5,000 a month. Your side hustle brings in $2,500 a month. So 50% of your day job. That gives you some extra security, because if ever anything happened with your day job, if there's any jeopardy, and you could be laid off or something could happen, right? You have an alternate source of income, that's secure during that time, right? You also have the option of, let's pretend, hypothetically, something did happen to your day job, you were laid off. You also have the option then of putting more time into your side hustle. You could take it full time at that point, and it may produce more than $2,500. If it was doing $2,500 when you were part-time, maybe you could do more if you worked at it full-time, right? So there's some obvious sort of advantages in doing this, right? The other fringe benefit, the big fringe benefits that I think are pretty amazing, are that you end up learning about business. You learn the principles involved in turning your value directly into income, right? That's what your side hustle is doing. It's taking what you have, your ability to work at something, and it's directly turning that into income, right? As opposed to your day job, where that's not what's happening with your day job. Your day job, you're going through an intermediary to turn your value into income. You're working for your employer, and the employer is the one that really is in charge of making a product or service and selling that to customers, right? They do all of that. They obfuscate all of that from you, right? They just tell you, we need you to do this particular task. Don't worry about the money. We'll worry about turning your task into money, and then we will give you a cut of the money we make, right? That's kind of how it works. So you're going through an intermediary to convert your value into income for yourself, right? So you're dependent on them. You can't do that if the employer went out of business, or the employer decided to lay you off, or you decided to leave. You wouldn't be able to turn your value directly into income. You would need some kind of employer to be the intermediary, right? Well, the beautiful thing about entrepreneurship and side hustles being like a sort of way to get into entrepreneurship, that's pretty easy, is that you don't have to use an intermediary. You're doing it yourself. You're interfacing directly with the customers, you're making the sales, and you're seeing exactly how your value translates into wealth, right? You're seeing the mechanism, how that's working, and you're improving that mechanism, right? You're doing the things that people are willing to pay for, right? That they see value in. So that on its own is an incredible skill. And in my experience and in my career, that's the thing that really separates a lot of employees. There's two types of employees, the ones that understand this and the ones that don't. And the ones that do, they are extremely valuable. They make better decisions, and they're much more of an asset because they understand what actions translate into more value, right? They empirically understand this because they've tried their hand at some kind of entrepreneurial venture. They've tried doing this themselves, and they've learned a lot, right? So this is something I encourage for everyone. If you have any kind of interest in doing this, I wholeheartedly encourage you to to step into this world, to learn as much as you can about it. It will help you on so many different levels. First of all, if you can pull it off, you'll make some money, right? Okay, that's the obvious benefit. Secondly, you will learn a lot of extremely useful skills that can be applied across the board to many different applications in your career and in your life. Some people end up turning their side hustle into a full-time business, and they become entrepreneurs. They become business owners. That's one way of doing it. Other people, they learn valuable skills doing this. And if they get an amazing job offer, at their day job or in that world, in their professional career, they can then use a lot of the skills they learned doing a side hustle to apply it directly to their career. And that will enable them to achieve even more in their conventional career. Things like learning business principles, learning sales, understanding value, understanding the importance of listening to your customers and doing market research. Understanding what activities add value and what activities don't, and being able to distinguish between those two, right? You'll be able to make much better decisions for a business if you know that stuff. So, there's a ton of it. Get in the chat. Let me know what you guys are wondering about, what you're struggling with. You should see a chat box somewhere near my face if you're watching this on a device. If you're watching it on a TV, I know some people watch it on a TV. I'm not sure how that works with, being able to participate in a live chat. But if you can, by all means, do it. Let me know what you guys are wondering about, and I'll be happy to speak to that. In the meantime, if you are looking to learn business, check out that course. That is a course that I created called the $100 MBA. There's a link to it in the description box below. And I myself have an MBA for what that's worth, and I've been the CEO of a small/mid-sized company, and I put a lot of the learning for that into this. This provides you exactly the same value as if you took a brick and mortar MBA in a university. And the reason why it does is because you are doing a self-study course where you're reading textbooks. You get the same textbooks that they're using in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program. So it's the same material. And the difference is that you're ordering the book off Amazon and you're reading it yourself, rather than reading it and then being given assignments on it by a professor in school, right? Now, the beauty of this course is that there are no assignments, there's no evaluations. You can just skim the material if you want. You could go really in depth if you want. You could do all the practice problems if you wish, and really, really go deep and learn it that way, if that's what you're looking for. But whatever your schedule is and whatever, the depth of knowledge is that you're looking for and the amount of time and effort you want to put into it, this is a solution for you. So this is the thing. Instead of paying 5 figures and learning it in a brick and mortar university on their schedule, on their terms, you can pay 1% of that, 2% of that, like whatever $100 is, and do it on your own terms. And you don't have to go any deeper than you want. So I created this course because I believe that this information, you shouldn't have to pay $50,000 to be taught this information. The information itself has been in the public domain for many, many years, just like a lot of mathematics. Charging someone $50,000 to learn mathematics is kind of like highway robbery, in my opinion. It's a bit underhanded. So I believe that this knowledge should be freely available to those who want to learn it, And I provide videos where I guide you through the material, but mainly you're learning it from the textbooks. And if you've ever taken anything in school, you've taken you've done high school math or something, honestly, business really isn't that much more difficult. If you can take care of like high school mathematics, you can certainly learn these business books. That's just the reality. Okay, the award for the first person in the live chat goes to Fiat. Congratulations, Fiat. Fiat says, can you talk about steps to start a side hustle, license, accounting, taxes, etc.? Thanks. Certainly I can, Fiat. Thank you for asking such an intelligent question. Let's get into it. Okay, steps to starting a side hustle. Now, here's the deal. There are people out there that would have you believe that what you should do is start with a lot of administrative type stuff. Okay? That means figuring out what your business is going to be called, registering that business name with the government, incorporating it into its own business entity, start thinking about, like, as you mentioned, filing its own tax return and all this kind of stuff. Or more regulatory, legal kind of stuff like that, like you mentioned. Okay. Now, I'm speaking generally. Okay. I'm speaking general because depending on what industry you're talking about, if you're making brownies, that's one thing. If you're giving ski lessons, that's another thing. If you are in the medical profession doing something, selling, a product that's like, surgical equipment or something, I don't know. Every industry has its quirks. Some industries are heavily regulated, like meaning that, you'd have to have a license to do that kind of thing legally, right? Other things are quite free and open. You don't have to have a license to offer guitar lessons. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it's going to vary by industry to industry. However, this is what I say, okay? The first thing you should do when you have an idea, you say to yourself, okay, I would like to give guitar lessons as a side hustle, okay? Instead of starting with the administrative, bureaucratic stuff where you figure out your name, you register it, that kind of stuff, you start thinking about taxes. Instead, the one and only concern you have is, can I sell whatever this is? Whatever my plan is to do, can I sell it? Because if you start by setting up, companies and incorporating and thinking about taxes and thinking about licenses and, all this kind of stuff, and you do all that work, and that work can involve cost, you have to pay for doing just, a lot of this stuff, okay? What would be the point of doing any of that only to find that at the end of the day, you can't get a single customer? No one is interested. And you can't get anyone to be interested, right? All that work you spent incorporating the company, setting it up, all that kind of administrative stuff, it would be pointless, right? It would have been wasted time because it doesn't add any value, right? Now, let's pretend that you then had a second idea and you wanted to try the second idea. Instead of, instead of giving guitar lessons, let's say you decide, okay, I'm going to, I'm going to bake brownies and sell them, starting to my friends in the beginning, right? I already know 30 people, let's say. I see them semi-regularly, and I also go to some kind of regular event. I'm a part of a social group or a club. They meet every weekend, and people bring food and stuff. So I'm going to sell my brownies at that event. Okay, just something like that. And then the idea is that if that goes well and I can make a bit of money, then maybe I can expand later. Okay, so let's say that's your second idea. Okay. If you start the second idea once again by saying, okay, I'd have to think of a company name, register the name, incorporate it, file taxes, declare to the government that I'm doing this, blah, 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 all the administrative stuff, right? Only to find that people say they like your brownies, but really when it comes down to it, they're not willing to buy them. As soon as you start charging money for them, nobody wants them. Which tends to suggest that, they're really not that into it, right? And you find that idea was a fail also, right? You'd be wasting your time. It would take you so long to try an idea, and it would take so much effort, and it would take money also to try every idea. It would be a very cumbersome process. It would be very wasteful. So what I recommend is forget about the administrative side. Just move ahead with trying to validate your idea to see if it's viable. And by that, I mean, go out and try to sell it. That's what I would start with. Because if you are met with silence, nothing else matters. Like, what's the point of incorporating a company that can't sell anything? Like, it's just a complete waste of time. It's a waste of money, time, and effort, right? So you would start with an idea. You would start seeing if you could sell it, right? Now, to be clear, this would even come before sometimes creating the thing that you're trying to sell, right? Instead of creating something new and then trying to sell it, sometimes the creating something new thing can be very time-consuming, take a lot of time. It could be very expensive. A lot of effort goes into it. But you're doing it because you have this theory that if you then offered it for sale, people would line up to buy it, right? And you'd be able to make a profit. That's your theory, right? But we don't know if that theory is valid until we actually build the thing and then offer it for sale and see what the result is, right? So what if you had this theory and it involved you working for 6 months in your garage or something, creating a thing that you think everyone's going to want, right? You have to put $10,000 of your own money into it. You have to spend every waking moment outside of work working on it, and it takes all your effort, all your time, only to discover that nobody wants this thing. You can't sell it to save your life. Nobody is interested. You think they should want it, but they don't. They are unwilling to pay for it, right? So that would be a terrible tragedy, right? So when I say you start off by offering it for sale, I mean literally you start out, the first thing you do is if you have an idea, start offering it, see if you can connect with people that would buy it, and then propose to them, here, I have this thing for sale. It costs this much. It does this. Is anyone interested, right? I would get that message in some way, shape, or form out there. And just gauge the interest. If there's a resounding silence, then you might think twice about proceeding to the next step to create that thing or to get it off the ground, right? If, on the other hand, you offer this thing and you've got people lined up that are interested, they say, hey, I'm interested. You say you charge this much? Sure, okay. Let's do this. You say you have several people that have that reaction. That validates that, okay, this is a thing that other people do want. It validates also that other people are willing to pay for it, and they're willing to pay the price you need them to pay for you to be profitable. And you can reach those people. You can communicate with them, and you can convince them that this is something that they should do, right? So you've got all that out of the way. You validated all that first, that as your very first step, right? Then you proceed with the next steps. And the next step, step number 2, would be to deliver whatever it is that you were going to do, whether it was a service or a product, okay? If it involves creating the product, then you would create the product, right? And like I've said before many times on this channel, the great thing is that if you're in that situation, you can actually get people to order it in advance, so they pay up front. Just like you ordering something off Amazon, you pay first, and then they send it to you, right? And you get it, 6 to 8 weeks later. You do the same thing. So if creating the thing involves paying out of pocket, it involves some expense, you're not having to pay out of your pocket to create this thing. You've sold you've sold it in advance, or some units of it in advance, and they've paid for it. So you then have the cash coming in to fund the creation of the product, right? And then if you do that, you complete these transactions and you start selling the stuff, and then that's when you think about the administrative stuff. Let's do this properly. Let's incorporate. Let's choose a name. Let's register it. Let's do taxes, and there are licenses involved. Okay, let's do this above board properly. Let's register and get a license. Blah blah blah. Like that kind of stuff. There's no point in doing any of that if you're just going to be left high and dry with an idea that doesn't work. So that's the general approach I would recommend to people of how to get something off the ground. Roxanne says, yes, I tested the market before my business was official by selling to people in the area and in pop-ups. Okay, great. Yeah, that's the way I would recommend people do it. AT says, is it better to pursue a side hustle that aligns with your passion or where the market is? How do we tell the difference between sticking with something through the hard times or just being delusional? Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be delusional. Every person who starts any kind of business type thing, you start off, with this theory that, oh, I think this is fantastic, therefore, everybody else should think this is fantastic too, right? Now sometimes we're right and sometimes we're wrong. Okay, that's why some businesses get off the ground and some businesses don't, right? So you'd want to obviously validate that. Now, your question was, what's kind of, in terms of like choosing an idea, okay, should you care more about what people are interested in, or should you care more about what I want to do, what I'm interested in, right? Well, that's a great question because the answer is both. You need to have both. It's not an and or thing. It's or like one or the other. It's you have to have both. You're going to be doing this, so it can't be something that you profoundly dislike, or you're completely not interested in. In order for it to be bearable and, maybe even slightly fun, it helps if you're interested in doing it. A lot of people are interested when they see money coming in. It doesn't matter what the business is. They're excited about like money coming in as they make, here's a sale, and here's a sale, and here's a sale, and here's a sale. And you're like, wow, that's awesome. Now I'm liking this, right? So yes, there's some sort of interest or passion about that, but more than that, it really helps if you actually have a passion for whatever this is, right? I mean, that is important. So the challenge is, can you find something that you are interested in to some degree, but also that other people want that you can deliver, right? That's what makes this a little bit challenging, right? Some people choose to go with like innovative new things, right? Like if you have an innovative type business, you're doing something new and exciting that no one's ever really done before. There are a lot of other businesses that are not innovative. They're, something tried and true that we all have heard of, we all need, it's not very kind of sexy, but it's a thing that everyone needs. I always use the example of the plumbing company, right? Plumbing might not be regarded widely as very glamorous and exciting, but everyone knows what that is. If you say, I do plumbing, I offer plumbing services, most people will know exactly what that is when you say it to them, right? They'll also know exactly why they would need that. And thirdly, they would understand why it makes sense to pay for that. I have to pay for this because I don't want the consequences of not having a plumber around or something, oh no, my toilet's leaked, or whatever. So, you know what I mean? There are really exciting, innovative businesses, and there's also sort of kind of boring traditional businesses, but they're very profitable because it's something that everyone needs. There is an established market for it. Everyone's already familiar with it. You don't have to like explain to people what it is. Everyone already knows, real estate agent, like people know what that is, you know why you might need one, right? So, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's kind of some of the things in place here. So finding something that's like something that you're interested in, but also something that there's obviously a demand for, that's the kicker, right? Tukasa says, I like your consistency. Thank you. And I'm sure I pronounced your name right. I specialize in pronouncing people's names precisely the way they're supposed to be pronounced. I take pride in that. And everyone loves it too. They are in awe of my skills in that area. Fiat says, in your experience, when someone with a great product or service that's in demand fails, more often than not, what is the reason why? Well, there's several reasons why, but probably the I mean, I don't have any data on this, but my gut feeling is the reason why it usually fails is because they don't have the sales side together. Okay. Now, there's other reasons too. There could be cost structure issues, okay, depending on what it is, right? But sometimes that's kind of a smokescreen, because if you really had your relationships with your customers down, if you really understood your customers, you would be able to get around a lot of those cost, like supply chain issues or cost issues, because you can reposition your company as someone that provides custom solutions. Like you could take a focus strategy, or you could be like a premium solution provider. So you're not necessarily getting the people that want the cheapest version of this, but you're wanting the people that want the best or a better version of it, where they're prepared to pay more if you offer more, if you focus on them a little bit more, right? So it is possible to get around that. As a general rule, it's very, very hard to compete with bigger players on price. That's just a failing strategy. Doing something and saying, I'm going to do it cheaper than everyone else, that's pretty damn hard usually when you're a small operation. Larger companies have economies of scale. That means they can do things more efficiently than you can because they're bigger. They can scale up. They can take advantage of, like, for example, when you buy something in bulk, usually you get like a premium price, like a cheaper price for something because you're buying a lot of it at once, right? So, for example, like, hopefully everyone can understand that. You have someone that's buying their raw materials or something, their inputs in bulk. They will always have an advantage over the small one-person company that's trying to compete with them, because the one-person company is not buying their stuff in bulk, right? But does that mean that the one-person company can't compete? Absolutely not. The one-person company can compete, and they can compete in some pretty major ways. One of them, the most basic way, is the focus strategy. That's where, you're not trying to sell to everyone and their brother. You're trying to sell to a very specific type of customer who wants special attention, right? For example, let's say you want to buy a bicycle, right? You're just into bicycles, right? You're that type of person. And I think we all know about them, right? You could buy a bicycle at Walmart, right? Now, would that be a designer bicycle that an Olympic champion would use? Probably not. It'd be a generic, made in China bicycle, whatever. And that might be good for a lot of people, right? It's cheap, it works, right? But let's say you're a biking enthusiast, okay? You're like a cycling enthusiast. You're not going to use the $100 Walmart bicycle. You want the $1,000 premium bicycle that they would use in the Olympics or something. I don't know, right? So do you go to Walmart to buy your bicycle? No, you go to the little tiny cycling shop where you walk in and it's all just bicycle stuff, right? Because that company is competing with Walmart. Walmart's big and Walmart sells bicycles, but the cycling shop is small. They also sell bicycles, but they compete with Walmart successfully because they cater to a different type of customer. They cater to the person who's really, really, really into bicycles, right? And they want all the little accessories, and they want the very base, the latest, best titanium framed bicycle, that's painted all kinds of fancy colors, and it's got AI on it. The self-driving bicycle, and, you can't find that stuff at Walmart. If you try and talk to the Walmart attendee in the bicycle department, they won't know how to help you, right? You go to the cyclist shop where they have expert salespeople and they sell the top stuff. That's where you go, right? So that's one example of how a small player, like a one-person company, can go head-to-head with a large company and still succeed. It's because you're not trying to do the same thing. You're not competing on price and saying, come to us because we're cheaper than Walmart. You're saying, no, we're not cheaper than Walmart, but that's okay because we're way better than Walmart. When it comes to this little teeny tiny thing, bicycles, right? Now, obviously, that's just an example I made up off the top of my head. It's probably not the greatest example, but hopefully you get the idea. Oh, I gotta say your name again. That's really good news. Sukasa says yes, it was that. Okay, great. Wow, that's very kind of you. If that's true, then right on. If it's not true, then thank you for saying so. Tsukasa says, what do you think about risking all your savings? Because most people aren't saving much, and usually they just have to risk their life's savings. Usually people in their early 20s, should they wait? Here's what I think about it. If you've heard that, it's crap. Okay, you don't have to risk your life savings, and you should not risk your life savings. Now, if we rewind to what I said about 10 minutes ago, 15 minutes ago, somebody asked me, Fiat asked me and said, how would you start? Like, what would you do to get a side hustle off the ground? What would you start with? And I said, I would start by putting your sales pitch out there. If you think you can sell this product or this service to these people, okay, let's put that to the test. Go to those people and propose, like, hey, I got this for sale. It costs this much. Who wants one? Right? That's the first thing you do. You haven't created this thing yet. You haven't actually offered it for sale yet, but this is what you do just to gauge interest. Let's see if anyone responds, right? Now, the whole point of doing that is that, let's say, nobody responds. You know, you might think to yourself, okay, maybe I'm looking in the wrong place. You see, my mistake maybe was that I went on social networking, and I went to a place in social networking where I thought those type of potential customers gather, so that if I did a post in that group or whatever, they would see it, they would jump on it because this is exactly what they're looking for, and they'd be contacting me to say, I'll take 2, right? But that's not what I got. It seems that nobody's interested. So, okay, maybe this is not the way to reach those people. I still think they're out there, and I still think they'd be interested in what I'm proposing. This thing for this price, under these conditions, from me. Maybe I'll try something else. I'll go to a physical event. Okay, not on the internet, not virtual, but like a physical event. We're going to go to a trade show where everyone talks about that stuff. It's the brownie baking competition of your part of the world, right? Where everybody dresses like a combination of Aunt Jemima and Lucille Ball, and they bring their best brownies to this event, and it's a brownie tasting event. It's like a brownie off, if you will. And surely fans of brownies will go there, and I'll be able to interact with them. And if I sort of hand out flyers or hand out cards or put up a booth, then these people will come to me and order brownies in advance or whatever I'm trying to do, right? Well, let's say you do that, you show up and you start talking to people about it and nobody's interested, right? Well, have you spent your life savings yet? No, you haven't. And this is a good thing because you probably just avoided making a very big financial blunder, right? If you had spent your life savings trying to register your company and buy a bakery and, hire employees and do an assembly line of brownies to create, 1,000 brownies a day that you're then going to sell to people that you're assuming will show up, you might have been very disappointed if you'd gone ahead and done all that, right? Because it seems like not many people are interested in that kind of product. Or at least your ability to get them interested is not really there. There's no evidence that it's going to work. So it's a good thing you didn't spend your life savings trying to do that. You shouldn't have to spend any real money. I know that seems counterintuitive to a lot of people, but it's true. Big companies exist to solve big problems. Small, one-person companies exist to solve small problems, right? If you are a small one-person company and you choose a major challenge, like you say, I'm going to start an airline. I'm going to start an airline in my garage. It's like, well, that's going to take a lot of capital. It's a very capital intensive thing. That would be the kind of thing you would leave to a big company, right? But if you say, listen, I'm going to offer cleaning services to airlines. You know how the airplane comes in, it lands, and then you have to clean it all up, restock it with food, refill it with fuel, and then so they can take off again with another load of passengers, right? That turnaround time is very important. And you say, I know a bit about airlines. I used to work in an airline. I know that they really need people that can get in there and do the cleaning properly, that are very efficient at it. So I'm going to offer those services. That's something I can do. That's a small problem, and you can win at that. But saying, I'm going to start an airline, no, that's a big problem. That's best left to a big company. Don't spend your life savings trying to get into that game, right? Does that make sense? You shouldn't have to really spend any money. All you should really risk is your time being wasted. Don't create the product before you sell it. Try selling it first to see if there's any interest. Then if there is, and only when there is, then you can create the product, and you still don't have to spend your money if you think about it, because you can do things like I mentioned earlier. You can, if you found interest, you can pre-sell whatever you're going to make so that people pay for in advance. So you get the cash that you then use to create it, and then you fill those orders, right? So you still don't have to pay money out of your own pocket, really, to get it off the ground, whichever way you slice it. Okay? So it's not about spending life savings. It's about understanding the principle. It's about having a good idea. It's about being able to connect to potential customers and validating your idea. And only when you've done that does it make sense to take the next steps. Hayat81 says, get startup funding. You can, but I don't recommend it. I've worked for many years with a lot of startup companies that are in that world. And unfortunately, I got a very bad taste in my mouth by observing all that stuff from the inside. It really seems like a scam. And the reason I say that is because startup funding is often not a grant. It's a loan. And it's a loan that you have to personally guarantee. That means if you take the money and you use it to start up your business and your business fails, you still have to pay back the loan. Now, considering most startups fail, your first idea will most likely fail. 95% chance it'll fail, but you'll learn a lot. Does it make sense to go $50,000 into debt on your first idea? That pretty much kills your entire startup foray. Like, you'll never go further into it because then you have to get a day job to pay back your loan. You know what I mean? It's underhanded. And I think it's very slimy of a lot of financial services companies to offer these kinds of funding to startups because they don't care about your idea. They make you guarantee that you're going to pay it back. So they really don't care what you do with it. All they're trying to do is sell a loan, right? So be very careful if you go down that route, okay? That makes validating your idea so you know it's going to work even more important if now you're throwing like debt financing into it. You know what I mean? So just be very careful. I really don't recommend. The thing I've observed is that people take the money and then they go to work on the stuff, on the activities that they like to do. The administration, getting office space, getting a website, printing business cards, this kind of stuff. And they blow their money on that stuff because that's the easy things to do. It's easy to spend money and throw money around. What's hard is, or harder, that especially a lot of introverted types and technical types don't want to do, is they don't want to do that validation. They don't want to see, can I get customers interested in this so that they will pre-order it? I'm building this, or I'm providing this. It costs this much. Would you like some? If you do, here's where you order it, right? Now, how many orders have we received? Right? Have they paid? When you make an order, you have to prepay, right? So it costs $100 or $1,000 or $10, whatever it is. How many orders have we made today, right? How much money do we have coming in? And if the answer is 0, well, I don't know. Maybe this idea is not going to work. We have to work on that. We have to solve that problem before we go any further. Or you risk all the work you do and all the money you spend to be like a total throwaway. It's like throwing it into a bottomless pit. Okay, so just be very careful about the funding thing. That amplifies the jeopardy, okay? Mario says, or Mario. I always thought it was fun to say Mario. That's how they say it in Britain, because they don't say it right. They say Mario. Says, I need some guidance. I'm a supervisor for a logistics company. Recently found out my lead driver makes more money than myself. How do I approach this with my employer and gain a wage increase? Well, that's kind of not what we're talking about here. We're talking about side hustles and entrepreneurship. I actually have I have a live stream coming up in an hour where we do talk about that, like HR nitrous. So save that till then, okay? Roxanne, I would also attend a food festival or a holiday event because everybody is expecting desserts. Yeah, like if you're talking about the brownie thing, yeah, exactly. Like this is where you can think of great ideas, right? What do people in that industry do? What do people in that world do? Find out, get to know them. If they're, potential customers, they're your prospects. Find out how they think, what they're interested in, where they're looking, what they're open to, and what their attitudes are about various things. That's what'll tell you, like, what you should do, If you understood all these people perfectly, you would know exactly what to do, that they would be interested in, that they would love, and that they would pay for. And you would know exactly how to communicate that to them, and convince them. Tsukasa says, thanks for answering my question with even honesty. You're absolutely welcome, Tsukasa. It was an intelligent question. Bro speaks this great at real-time image what his books and courses would be like. Well, thank you very much. Yes, if you are interested in learning business, check out that course. That's the course I made for this kind of stuff. You can learn everything you would learn with an MBA. Like if you went to a university and took a 2-year degree, that's what you can learn. It's a course, but really it's a program because you learn the content of multiple courses. The catch is that it's all completely self-study. So you're getting a pile of textbooks. These are the same textbooks. They're not written by me. They're written by absolute experts in the field. They're the textbooks they use in places like Harvard Business School in their MBA program and in many other top MBA programs around the world. They're like the gold standard of learning the various subjects like marketing and accounting and that kind of stuff, right? So all I'm doing is I provide you videos that sort of guide you through it. The learning comes from reading the books. Now, you can just skim the books and get a very cursory understanding. You kind of, you know what it is. It's there if you want to go deeper. Or if you really, really wanted to, you could go very in-depth. You could do all the practice problems and everything, all the case studies, and you would get the same result as if you had gone to a 2-year full-time MBA, like Master's of Business Administration degree in a brick and mortar university. You would get the same result. You would know the same stuff. So if that's any value to you, if that's what you're looking for, check that out. It's $100. That's like 2% of the cost of doing that at a university. So that's why I created that. I think that universities charge way too much for that kind of knowledge. The knowledge has been in the public domain for a very long time, the vast majority of it. So why are they charging so much to teach that to you? Milky Drop says, I worked in health startup for 3 years, so stressful, and I don't think I would want to do it again. I was one of the founding team members, but I was just laid off in August, still looking for a new job. Well, if you were laid off, I mean, that's kind of different than being a founder, right? Like a founder technically is the person who's in charge, right? You are the owner, you are the manager, you're in charge. So, you wouldn't, being laid off would not be the right term. You just decide to to wind it down. You would decide not to do it, or you would decide to leave, right? But someone kicking you out, that suggests that you're not the founder, right? I know what you're saying. You're one of the founding team members. I'm a very cynical person. I need to warn everyone about that. I would just assume that's some polite little term they use to make everybody feel nice about the fact that they are not the founders, right? The founding team. And also team members, like, not to get hung on semantics and stuff, but like that also seems a bit, I don't know. It seems a bit belittling to people. You're a team member. I know it's a technical term. There's nothing derogatory about it, but sometimes the way and how it's used, right? But listen, Milky Drops, I'm sorry you had a bad experience. There are, just like there's all kinds of employers, some really good and some really, really bad ones out there. There's all kinds of startups, Some are, run by essentially, ultimately, like, VC, like venture capital funds and things that, they don't care about anyone. They just care about money, and they're very ruthless. And they treat you like crap. That's basically the common theme. There are others that it's like a small business. It's like I know this is a cliche, but it's like a family, like literally like a family where people are actually nice to each other, and they all want to help each other, and they all care about each other, and they feel like a team. Like they actually feel like an actual team pulling together, where they're personally and emotionally invested in it. And, like there's some very, very good startups out there on a personal level that treat everybody really, really well. It takes all kinds to make a world, and we see this. It really runs the spectrum. It sounds like you weren't working for one of the amazing ones, so I'm sorry to hear that. Better luck next time. Don't stay. It might be a blessing in disguise if it came to an end. You were there for a while, you learned a little bit, you saw some stuff, and now it's time to move on. If it wasn't that great, hey, this is maybe a good thing. You move on, onwards and upwards, right? Next time, you'll land with a bunch of people that actually care about you and they value you a little more. Roxanne says, I was thinking of doing crowdfunding to get some pre-orders. It's low risk and I will get sales before spending a ton on inventory. Yes, you could do that. I don't have a lot of experience with crowdfunding. I've worked with a couple of startups who have done it, but I didn't see all the details of how they did it, and I didn't really understand the way that they did it, like what the draw was. To me, it still does seem like you have the same problem before you, which is you have to get the awareness out there to people who would be interested in what you're doing and who would pay for your product or your service. In business speak, you call it an offering. An offering means like a product or a service or a combination thereof that you're selling. Okay, so if you like, crowdfunding is like you have to get a crowd of people to want to help you financially, right? Now, if you had a crowd of people that they all were willing to give you money, presumably, I know it doesn't technically mean this, but it almost means this. That would kind of mean that you would have your business validated, right? You have a crowd of people that are willing to give you money. They're willing to pay for your product. But I understand with crowdfunding that there could be two different groups of people. There could be a group of customers that actually want your product and they're willing to pay for it. But there could be another crowd of here, it might be friends and family, that they don't really want your product, but they do want to help you. So they're willing to give you a couple of bucks or something, So I understand there could be two different crowds. So if you already have this crowd over here, like friends and family that will support you financially or willing to contribute to your business, great. But to me, once again, because it distracts from what I said is what I recommend the first step to be, which is validation. And I also said you shouldn't need to spend any real money to start this up. You shouldn't. If you think you do, you haven't put enough thought into how you could start it up. Okay? For example, if you're picturing a restaurant, you want to own a restaurant. Let's say that's your ambition, okay? But you think, oh, it costs hundreds of thousands of dollars to own like a restaurant, whether I'm leasing it or I'm, buying it. Either way, it's expensive, right? So, Bill, how can you say that I don't need to spend any money if I want to try and do a restaurant? Well, this is what I say. I say, think of the value of a restaurant. Why do people go to a restaurant? Think about this. One option would be the food, okay? There's some food that you get at that restaurant that you can't get anywhere else, and you go for the food because you love it. You must have that food, okay? If that's the reason, you don't have to have a brick and mortar building to sell that food, right? In this day and age, if it just say, let's pretend it was coffee, okay? Like a type of coffee. You could brew the coffee at home and then you could have it delivered. You know what I mean? Like you could have a friend drive it in their car and deliver the coffee to someone's house, like a pizza, right? I've never had a takeout pizza, as you can tell from my physique. And, don't believe anyone who suggests otherwise. You know what I mean? You don't have to spend $200,000 getting a restaurant property fully equipped with its own kitchen and employees, and staff, to be able to sell a coffee to the public. You know what I'm saying? There are cheaper ways. You could have the equivalent of a hot dog cart if you really wanted to. But my point is that there are cheaper alternatives to get the business off the ground in the first phase. Get this coffee out there, get fans of your coffee out there, and then if it makes money and if it's growing, then it might make sense to move on to phase 2, where you get a physical property, you have either a booth in a mall or an actual building that would serve as a restaurant, right? So you do it in stages. You work up to that, right? So you should never need a ton of startup capital to start these businesses. You really shouldn't. It's a matter, there's always a solution where you don't need the startup capital. It's just, you got to put some thinking work into it. How can I scale this down, right? How can I do this at a smaller level, right? Maybe, for example, the restaurant thing, let's say it was coffee. Instead of selling the coffee directly to the public, maybe there's other options where you'd sell the coffee frozen to a grocery store so that they put your coffee product on their shelves, and you don't have to deliver it to the public and take orders by individual members of the public. You just sell it to a chain of grocery stores, and that's one of the coffee products they carry, just locally, So you're only dealing with really one customer, is that chain of stores, Maybe you talk to the owner and they're open to doing it. You say, hey, okay, here's a sample, right? And they say, yes, we'll do this. I'm just thinking of ideas off the top of my head. But the point is, there's always a cheap alternative to validate the idea and then start bringing money in. And if it's a success, then you can grow, then you can scale up, and you pay for different things that will result in scaling up the sales. Milky Drop says, yes, it was VC funded, and you're right at the semantics of the founding team. They hired a lot of us to help build the product and then let us go. Yeah, that's unfortunate. It would be nicer if people were more transparent, but the problem is, I hate to say it, but in some situations, there's advantages to them if they just exploit people. It works out better for them. The problem is that they burn their bridges, right? And sometimes you can get a feel for what they're going to do or what they're liable to do by evidence of how they're acting, right? So if they're lying about small things, then be on your guard. They might lie about big things and so on, right? But I'm sure Milky Drops, I'm sure you're a little older, a little wiser for this experience, And the great thing is that if you've been in a couple of bad situations when you're younger, you generally tend to wisen up to spotting those situations early when you're older so you can avoid them and you end up in much better places. That's what happened to me, and that's what has happened to a lot of people. Nurhaya says, why is it that so many founders are former product managers? That's what I saw at the Y Combinator website. Well, Y Combinator, I mean, that's a whole other thing. That's like tech, that's innovative tech startups. And it's very specific innovative tech startups. They're in that whole like Silicon Valley sort of ecosystem there. That's a whole other thing. That's a bit of a bubble. I'm not from that world, so I don't pretend to know much about it. That's the world of sort of like high roller VC companies and all this kind of stuff. And it's a whole different thing. Like the rest of the world operates differently. Like think in every city you've got people starting up construction companies, drywall companies, like there's all kinds of small business happening everywhere. Wherever you are in the world, you could be in like the middle of the boonies, you could be in some other country that's far flung from Silicon Valley in the United States, but there's all kinds of small business happening. There's all kinds of startups happening. They're not maybe innovative tech startups, but or maybe some of them are. You never know. To do AI and stuff, I mean, people can do it in their basement. You know what I mean? But there's all kinds of activity happening everywhere across almost every industry. Looking special case, this bubble, which is Silicon Valley and some of the innovative tech stuff they're doing, that's not representative of the larger world, right? For example, oil and gas, they don't behave the same way the tech world does. You know what I mean? Like agriculture, food production, they don't behave the same way. A power distribution and energy, they don't behave the same way. Construction and real estate, they don't behave the same way. Services like accounting and financial services and things like that, they don't behave the same. I mean, it's all completely different. So remember, don't take very specific advice that happens in like a very specific industry in a very specific part of the world and then just generalize that and say that's how everything works. Just be on your guard against doing that. That's why if you have a theory, this is what you would test in the validation phase of doing your side hustle or startup, right? You would go and try and connect with customers. And if you see if your theory is correct, do these people respond in the way that you're hoping to this thing that you're proposing? That's why you put that to the test. Now, as for product managers, I haven't seen that, but then again, I gather that you're talking about a very specific industry type thing here, so I'm not gonna dispute that with you. I'm sure you're correct. Roxanne says, "Thanks for your advice. I'll need to get in touch with stores to sell my products." Yeah, that's one way of doing it. Or you could go direct to the public. You don't need the thing about startups is that you're in the real world. There are no rules, and I mean that in a good way. It means that you don't have to go through gatekeepers to get to success. Now, if you talk to stores to carry your product, great. That's definitely one way of doing it. Will those stores promote your products? Will it be something that they will drive sales towards your products? The jury's out on that. You'll have to figure out how that's going to work. But you can go direct to the public. You could say, look, I don't need necessarily some champion to believe in me. I'm going to go direct to the public. And if I can get the public to like what I do, albeit in small numbers, I might have something here that I can then build. So there's many ways of doing it. That's why, you come up with an idea and then you validate it before you spend any real money and effort on it. And there you go. So we've reached the end of the chat. I see there's 31 people here. Thank you for joining me on this. I have decided, special announcement, I've decided that I'm most likely going to do another live stream, another weekly live stream. I'm going to tack on another one, and it might be very short in the beginning, but I'm thinking of calling it Private Equity Rundown. So you heard it here first, where I'm going to talk about private equity. So most people don't know what that is. Most people don't care, but there's a lot of money in it. And it's interesting to me because it's the buying and selling of businesses and stuff like that. Is it related to this stuff? Kind of, but I'm not going to combine it into side hustle ideas. Side hustle ideas is something completely different. It's kind of what we did today. It's what you can do with your creative idea and step into the world of business at like a, basic low level, learn the ropes, and you can keep it as a little thing that just supplements your income, or you have the option of like ramping it up, maybe replacing your day job by doing it full time and becoming a business owner. And that's how you make your fortune, and that's what you do with your life. It's a combination of, a creative idea, a creative venture, something you have a passion for, with, a sort of job that earns your income. It can be a fantastic thing. And that's kind of what we talk about here. But I'm thinking of doing this and to talk about sort of high-level business ideas, because I don't really have an outlet for that on YouTube. And I know there's not a huge demand for it on YouTube, but I want to do it anyway, just to see if it goes anywhere. So if you're interested in that, there's a chance I might pilot that this week, maybe on Friday, or for sure next week. So we'll see about that. Anyway, thank you to Roxanne, to Milky Drops, to Tsukasa, to Mario, to Fiat, to AT, to everybody who participated and everybody was here. You guys are awesome. I wish you nothing but success in the future. I will be back next week at the same time for another edition of Side Hustle Ideas. So see you then. Take care.